When you do things that are healthy, you don't necessarily get an immediate and obvious result. Preserving your mitochondria, for example, may not give you immediate benefits or any noticeable effect at all, but it can save you from dementia over time. Sometimes, though, the results are immediate and obvious.
Get in there and lose some weight. I'm gonna let Knife and Rocky fly this plane. Hi, Rocky.
For the impatient, I won't drag it out any longer. The supplement that helped my mother with quick weight loss was TMG, which is also known as Betaine Anhydrous. This provides methyl groups, and this is mainly used by your liver. A lot of hullabaloo has been made about the MTHFR gene lately, and that can be related to impaired methylation. Impaired methylation can cause many problems in the body, and one of them is a fatty liver. The MTHFR gene is involved in the use of folate to methylate toxic substances such as homocysteine, or to modify epigenetics to turn genes on and off. But guess what? That's not the only way to do so, and in fact it's the inferior path for this process. It's called the folate pathway because it requires folate to function, aka vitamin B9, and it consumes it too. Prenatal folate deficiency leads to birth defects causing serious and irreparable cognition problems and many other issues. It's also associated with severe dementia in old age. It's very common for Alzheimer's patients to have this issue. It's tempting to just supplement folate to deal with the issue, but as I've talked about in other videos, supplementing B vitamins can cause a lot of problems, aside from B12 anyway, which usually requires an injection to be effective. Most issues people have with B vitamins come from issues with bad bacteria in the gut microbiome. And these bacteria consume your B vitamins before they're even absorbed. But supplementation can't easily restore this balance, and it can also make it much worse. It can even lead to neuropathy due to depletion of B12, which is required to use many of the other B vitamins, or basically all of them. Lacking B12 also makes it impossible for other B vitamins to work, especially folate, which turns into a useless methylated form when B12 is low. And this is probably the real main cause of most folate deficiency today, because without B12, your B9 becomes useless very quickly. The real solution to B vitamin woes is to limit foods that cause gut dysbiosis, especially grains and of course sugar, and instead prefer animal products and eat plenty of red meat or fish to get good levels of vitamin B12. And certain fish are very high in B12, though I forget which ones off the top of my head. And B12 is the most important one, and the one people today are most likely to be deficient in, but it could present as deficiency in some other B vitamin because, as I said, it's required to use them, which is not something that doctors seem to know. But even then, it doesn't address the dreaded MTHFR problem. You can take all the folate in the world, and all it will do is get your other B vitamins even more out of whack. So now what? Thankfully, it's not the only pathway, as I alluded to before. The other pathway uses betaine, aka TMG, trimethylglycine. In fact, I would say this is the superior way since it doesn't deplete folate or vitamin B12. When you methylate on the folate pathway, you may get benefits for your heart and for fighting off cancer, but you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And in this case, Peter means your brain. And you definitely don't want that. Especially today as people are already getting less and less B12 in the diet. And keep in mind that this methylation using the folate pathway also consumes B12. So this can make you deficient in B12. And if you take betaine, or TMG, then you can avoid this issue. You can get tiny amounts of betaine in the diet, but mainly the body makes it using dietary choline. You may be tempted to ask which form of choline to supplement, and people always do, but it's far better to take TMG instead. It doesn't require any further processing in the body, and it's the exact molecule that your body uses for methylation. And yes, there is a little glycine in there, but it's negligible by weight. So you still want to supplement glycine too, which you really want to have in pretty large doses. Unless you have a great deal of daily broth in your diet anyway. 100 years ago, everyone in Western countries did. Now, almost no one has broth daily. And if they do, it's thin, weak broth from other countries, often India and sometimes even China. You may think you get enough choline in the diet already, but very few people do. About 80 to 90% are deficient in the UK, for example, and that's deficiency as defined by governmental agencies, not people who simply have less than optimal levels, which may be just basically no one today. And there's no campaign against it, even though it causes IQ loss in children, and the government doesn't really care about that. Some politicians and CEOs probably even prefer the populace be dumber because they're easier to rule over. If you eat 4 eggs a day, you may have enough, otherwise you don't, and should definitely supplement TMG. Unless you eat brains, of course, but while all of our ancestors did that not so long ago, very few people do today. Some of the earliest printed menus feature entrees like calf liver with brain sauce, or simply a whole goat head. These were what was served in high society back in the day, and interestingly, the rich seemed to know what was truly nutritious, and also to savor it as being delicious.
I hope you relish it as much as I.
With some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
So you probably believe me by now that it's good for your liver, but what does that have to do with weight loss? When you talk about metabolic health and metabolism, you're really talking about your liver. It's your liver that produces ketones when you fast, and it's your liver that constantly shoots out small amounts of glucose to keep your red blood cells alive. You'll die even quicker without your liver than you will without lungs in only about 3 minutes. As mentioned in the last section, your liver also can't get rid of the fat trapped inside of liver cells. It's not just in between the cells, it's in the cells. Unless it spins betaine to do so, aka TMG. The problem is that people have less and less choline in the diet, which is used to produce betaine. There is some in red meat, but it is mainly in foods we don't eat much of today. The other problem is that our need for betaine goes up and up over time because our diet is more and more full of things that produce liver fat. This includes alcohol and fructose, which are the two worst offenders. It also includes all other carbs, which leads to the production of liver fat when eaten in large quantities, such as those recommended by the FDA Diabetes Pyramid or the Canadian Bagel and Donut Rainbow. Many food additives are also horrible for the liver and cause liver fat, and they need to be methylated too. Basically, this methylation process is used both to store away toxins and to break them down and get them out of the liver either as ketones or glucose. So the more garbage that you eat, that is the more plants and the more lab experiments, the more fatty and dysfunctional your liver is going to become. And if you can't mobilize energy in the first place, obviously, you can't burn it. In fact, the main symptom of liver issues is lack of energy because you're just not producing any energy. Literally. You will find it insanely difficult to do the simplest task when your liver is in really bad shape, when you're in liver failure, let alone to do exercise. As for fasting, you can just forget it. It's going to be basically impossible. If you have problems fasting, that's often the issue. You may think you're skinny, but your liver may be full of fat and close to totally shut down, even if you look athletic. You can also hold on to fluids due to your liver issues, and if you have a bit of a pooch belly, it may not all be fat. It can be liquid from a liver that's in poor shape, gut inflammation, and much, much more. You might find that simply getting healthier will be enough to make some of this weight simply whoosh away like it was never there in the first place, which is what happened to my mom. Taurine and glycine are also good for the liver, and supplements in the description are given in order of importance for the average person, at least in my opinion. But if your liver is a problem, then TMG is the most critical nutrient you need to think of, though many others are also important for the liver, like taurine, glycine, alpha-ketoglutarate, Inositol, and Hyaluronic acid. A while back, someone noticed I changed my dose of TMG from 1500 milligrams to 3 grams a day. I'm not sure exactly when I did that, but at some point I did. There wasn't much behind this except that I didn't feel like I needed the full dose at the time, which is usually around 3 to 4 grams. But as I read about more of the benefits, I decided I should just take the whole dose, even though I take quite a bit of powders every day as it is. Some people have raised concerns about overmethylation, but this isn't really a thing in the human body. Your body only methylates what it needs to methylate, and these days you can be sure essentially everyone is methylating far less than they should be. And I think the problem here goes back to the vitamin consumption that we have on the folate pathway, and that's why people think that overmethylation might be occurring. But in reality, this shouldn't be an issue, and if you're using betaine, then it's definitely not an issue. This is also probably a factor in mental illness, by the way, because that's how many neurotransmitters are taken care of by the body. So if you have issues with excessive emotions of some kind, then this may help you. Unless you're into that sort of thing.
Where you going?
Let's rewrite it. Action Jackson can't cry. That's what's going down.
You know what, Kirk? I'm ready to do the scene.
Hey, what scene? The scene is about emotionality. Where is it? Now it's time to flip the script. Get till Chinese New Year, wait for my man to cry.
Now you probably can run into problems from methylating with folate, which I've already talked about a bit. But the betaine pathway is totally different, and your body has literally hundreds of other uses for betaine, including simply turning it into choline, and your brain is going to be the number one place where that's going to be of use. So you should have no problems even at very high doses, though it's theorized that at some unknown but high dose it could thin the blood. So 3 grams a day should be fine, and some studies do 6 grams a day or even more and didn't report any issues. And that might be helpful if your liver has some serious issues. That might be a good place to start. If your liver is in great shape already, which is not true for most people today, you're probably not going to really lose weight from it. Some trials have shown weight loss even with randomized participants who were athletic and not overweight. But in general, it's probably the people with a fatty liver who account for most of the weight loss. And remember, you can be underweight and still have a fatty liver, let alone athletic. Interestingly, it is also shown in athletes to lead to better overall body composition, and in the long term, more muscle mass may help protect from obesity too. Basically, the main reason to take it is for your liver and the many benefits of a healthy liver, and it's also needed by your cells to control the cell membrane and fluid retention and movement. This is especially important for your muscles, and it acts like an exercise aid for sports and for developing muscle through weightlifting. If you perform better, your muscles will gradually grow, but this only works if you actually do the work. It won't just increase muscle size by taking it. Well, it seems to help a bit as an exercise aid, and it's a no-brainer to take it if you do want more muscle. Much better is that it protects from muscle loss with age by protecting your mitochondria from the damage of aging. If you're a frequent viewer, you might guess that since it protects your mitochondria, it may also protect against cancer, which seems to be correct. In fact, it's shown to reverse the Warburg effect in cells and also to keep mitochondria from being damaged by free radicals. Observational studies have shown reduced death from prostate cancer in men is associated with choline and betaine intake. And 60% less breast cancer was seen in women with high dietary intake compared to low dietary intake. While it's just observational data, it is a very large result size, way stronger than what you'd get from any kind of medication. And it's unlikely to be due to another cause, or if it is, it's because the foods you're eating are also basically animal products, because that's where you get the choline in the first place. It's worth reading some of the studies I posted excerpts of, but in short, one of the things it does is increase mitochondrial activity in fat cells. That is, it makes white fat cells more like brown fat cells, which burns a lot more energy, which I thought was interesting and is probably something everyone would like to have. But sometimes these things are in very long papers, and getting the quotes out and attaching them in the right place can take forever. And people complain if I don't make the exact citation. So in this case, I just am not going to do it. If they want the proof, they can go read for themselves, I guess. Or not. In short, take TMG, especially if you have liver issues, homocysteine issues, energy issues, or brain fog. Our main dietary source is choline, but about 90% of people in Western countries are deficient, and it's likely much worse everywhere else, especially places like India and China where very little meat and eggs are eaten. Some will claim it is in whole wheat, but basically it loses it all long before it gets to you, especially if it's in bread form. You might get some in wheat germ. And if that weren't the case, then we wouldn't have so much deficiency, because that's the main thing people are eating. If you're close to zero carb and eat eggs or brain daily, then you're probably fine. But the more carbs you have, the more betaine that you actually need. And that also applies to junk ingredients, such as all that biosynthetic slop that's in everything now, like citric acid and allulose and all of that garbage. It also applies to herbal remedies and to medications and on and on and on. For some people, especially those who just can't seem to lose weight, or they have very, very little energy, and I know there's a lot of people like that because they tell me all the time. For them, TMG could be exactly what you need to get your body running smoothly again, and could lead to rapid weight loss like it did for my mother. It also boosts mitochondrial function, prevents muscle loss with age, and people with high intake show dramatically lower rates of breast cancer, and this probably is going to hold true for other cancers as well, since it reverses the Warburg effect. I'm going to put this video up as members only, and I'll probably do more of that in the future, just because it cuts back on the time I have to spend dealing with people who want to argue and people who want to promote nonsense or dangerous things. I spend tons of time on the channel already, and to be frank, I just can't continue spending that much time anymore. Though I do make some money from the channel, it's basically like I'm paying to do the channel, because it takes away from other work that pays way, way more. If you do want the channel to keep going, try to give a like for every video and do the hype thing if you're on a mobile phone, because the likes have gone down and down too, and I'm not sure how much good it really does, but if the channel does better, then I can afford to spend some more time on it. But thanks for all the people who do help the channel, which is basically everyone that's going to be seeing this, because it's going to be members only. Even if it's just the people giving a like and a positive comment or an informative comment, and especially the people sharing it to their family or to Facebook and stuff, because the real point here is to get the information out to people, and that's just what's so frustrating, is that I can't really seem to reach more people with it. I would have stopped years ago without all of you guys, and you know, if nothing else, the information is out here for the people who do want it, and hopefully YouTube will keep it up here forever. And also, I want to say there's no AI for my voice, which should be obvious if you've watched the channel a while, because they didn't have AI voices back then, at least ones that sounded at all like a person. And I don't use AI for the words that come out of my mouth either, or for the research I do when making the videos, which basically would lead to spewing out a cheap imitation of whatever everyone else is saying. And even if they don't use AI, that's what most channels basically are. If I can't say something that's different from the so-called common wisdom, then I'm not going to bother to say anything. Anyway, I just had to make this video because I thought it was amazing how much it helped my mother's weight loss, once I could get her to actually try it anyway. And on top of that, she hasn't sounded so happy in years. Now, if only I could get her to give me the Christmas gift that I actually want for a change.
It's some cocaine. The man said that would be the one you wanted. He did the face that you do when you've had some, you know.
I'll take it back for you, love, and change it for some heroin.